So far in this course, we have only been talking about writing your code, creating your Apex classes, writing some methods, creating some variables and solving a problem, right? But in this video, we are going to talk about testing your code. And testing your code is as important as writing your code, if not more. Testing is a critical component of the development process, and if you test your code well and on time, then you can find out more bugs or errors or exceptions in your code in early stages of the development. This will make your code more error free and it will be beneficial for you only in the long term, because your business users or your application users will not come back to you with lot of bugs. Now if we talk about only Salesforce, then it is mandatory to have at least 75% of code coverage for all your Apex code before you can move it to your production org. So if you want to deploy your Apex code, you need to make sure that you at least have 75% of code coverage, else your deployment will fail. And this 75% is just a number given by the Salesforce, but you should always try to keep your code coverage way above than 75%, because more you test, the better your code will be, and as a developer, you will live happier. If you guys think that testing is not as important as development, then you should think again, because testing doesn't only make your code error free, it can also save lives. On April 26, 1994, a China Airlines plane got crashed due to a software bug, and in this accident 264 people lost their lives. And this disastrous accident could have been avoided if the developers of that software would have paid more attention on testing their code. I did not want to take this incident to talk about the software testing, but this incident tells us how important it is to test our code before we move it to the production or before our application goes live. So always make sure that you test your code, and testing is an equal phase of a development life cycle as your development is. Now testing can be of multiple types. There can be unit testing that we as a developer should take care of. There could be a system integration testing which can be done by the software testers either manually or using some automation framework. There is UAT as well, which is user acceptance testing, which is mostly done by the business users or the BAs who brought you that particular user story. As a developer, we need to focus on the unit testing, and this unit testing can be done by writing some code the very similar way how we write our code to implement the solution for a problem. The unit testing means testing the individual parts of your code, like testing the methods of a Apex class. Each method represents a unit, and here in unit testing we focus more on each unit rather than the complete application. So we test each and every unit and we supply some sample data to that unit. For example, if we have a function called sum of two numbers, then we need to supply those two numbers and then we check the output of that function. Does it give the correct result or not? And we also supply some invalid values, like maybe adding 0 with infinity, which is not a valid value. Then we should see how our function is reacting based on these invalid values. Now you must be thinking, if we write these unit tests, then who will be executing these unit tests? Are we the ones who will be executing the unit tests as well? The answer is yes and no. If you want, you can execute your test manually. So Salesforce gives us nice UI to execute our test. We can also run it through our command line interface as well, or from our developer console as well. So as a developer, we can execute our test. But when we talk about a deployment process, then these tests are auto executed by a software called test runner. So when you deploy your code to production, then this test runner is going to pick each and every test from your code and it's going to run all those tests, and then based on that it's going to calculate how much code coverage do you have. If your code coverage is above 75%, then it will allow for the deployment to complete, else it's going to show an error. Now few things to focus here. When you write a test, first you need to give a clear explanation what you are testing. If we take our sum of two number method again for an example, then we know that we are testing the addition functionality. So you can simply say testing the addition of numbers. The second point is you need to define the method that you are testing. And the third point is you need to supply all type of value to that method. You need to supply valid values as well, invalid values as well, bulk values as well, and single values as well. And based on that, you need to check what is the output of your code. So that is our fourth point. You need to define the result as well that you are expecting from your method, and you need to check this result for all type of values. So what to test? You need to test the single action or a single value in your method. Then for the bulk actions or maybe bulk records or bulk values, so your method should act accordingly for a single action, and it should act accordingly for the bulk actions. You need to check your method for the positive behavior when all the values are valid, and the negative behavior as well when some of the values are invalid, or maybe you want to produce some negative result. And if needed, then you need to check your method for restricted user as well. For example, let's say a method is operating on some sensitive data, and few of the users in your Salesforce org has access to that sensitive data. Then are you taking care of those users or eliminating those users who does not have access to your restricted data? In the end, let's have a look at how a Apex unit test looks like. So here I have a test class, and I named this class as my class, and it has a test method named as my test. Now, how do I know that this is a test class and this is a test method? Take a look at this @istest annotation, which indicates that this is a test class and this is a test method. So to create a test class, you need to use @istest annotation. Now, if you want to create a test method, that is only possible within a test class. You cannot write a test method in a normal class, which is not a test class. So a test method's dependency is that it should be written inside a test class only. So there are few characteristics of a test method. It must be static and it must not return a value. So its return type should be void. And a test method can only be public or global. You cannot make it private or protected. So I guess that's all in this video. In the next video, we'll be writing a test class.